Look, I don't think I've ever met anyone who's worked at an agency who actually really likes pitching. One of the successes we had was pitching for Coca-Cola. So we actually got them to laser cut aluminium covers that looked like with a swoosh like the Coca-Cola logo on it. So it looked like it was Coke cans rolled out.
You know, when I'll put a deck together or a presentation together, I say that word to myself, theatre. That's what I'm thinking about.
Remember the old cellophane glasses?
Yeah.
So we actually had them designed and cut out, and they had to put the glasses on to read the numbers. And you can imagine these Coca-Cola executives wouldn't want to do this, but you got to see the numbers. But the reality is often the people that are pitching you are not the people who turn up to deliver the work.
Yeah, they're not the subject matter expert.
To be honest, that was the moment where I felt so isolated and left and burnt that was the moment where I went, I don't want to do this anymore.
Hello and welcome to Season 3 of the Push podcast. My name's Jack Ferguson, an experienced brand strategist with a science background. I've worked in marketing for 15 years, have held numerous internal senior roles spanning national and international brands, and now I work as a consultant. In my career, I've worked across 25 industries and helped increase client and employer revenue by over $40 million. I will be your host. This season of the podcast is essential listening for marketers looking to better sell their strategies to stakeholders. I'll host senior marketers who will share stories, analogies, and mental models that help explain complex concepts to non-marketers, get client buy-in, and keep internal teams engaged. Whether you're in-house, agency side, or a consultant, I aim to equip senior marketers like you with tools to speak up, lead with confidence, and persuade others of your strategy's effectiveness. Thanks for being here, and don't forget to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. Hello and welcome to Season 3, Episode 35 of the Push podcast. Today's co-host is Gerard Doyle, an experienced marketer and founder, and recently he's celebrated 10 years building his marketing agency, Fractal. With over 20 years of experience in marketing, both domestically and internationally, he's made it his mission to help innovators, creators, and businesses find their market and growth. Some people think of him as a growth hacker, others a part-time CMO, others the startup marketing guy, others know him as the owner of Fractal. Whichever way you look at it, having worked across dozens of industries, he's the person businesses call when they want their product to cut through and scale. You can find links to Gerard's online presence in the description of this podcast. You can also find links to my online profiles there as well. Let's bring in Gerard. All right, Gerard, how are you doing?
Very well, thanks, Jack.
Thank you for coming back to talk to me again. It's been a little while.
It has. We were trying to work out when we last even saw each other, I think maybe 13 months ago. In real life, anyway.
In real life, yeah. And then there's probably 5 years, at least, in podcasting years.
Hopefully we've aged okay.
But you was when I used to do founder interviews for The Push, you came on and shared your story about being a founder. But as The Push has evolved into a podcast now for senior marketers, you're here in the capacity of owner of Fractal. So looking forward to talking to you in this capacity now.
Yeah, like any good business person, I'm a bit of a chameleon. I sort of change my pattern and what I look like depending on who I'm speaking to. So today, yes, absolutely, I'm the agency guy who's coming in.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk today about how broken pitching is. And you've had a ton of experience in this area. You've got a lot of good stories to share. So let's get into it because you have a view that pitching somewhat broken in the marketing world.
Oh, look, I don't think I've ever met anyone who's worked at an agency who actually really likes pitching. I think the first couple of pitches are super nerve-wracking, and then you get jaded about the entire experience. I think about pitching as just being this sort of cost that ultimately has to be borne by the client. When you're putting out an RFI, RFP, all these initializations that we make up in marketing for everything. So, you've got a request for information, request for pitch. It feels like you're just offloading your work. You're just saying, look, you answer all my questions and I'll make a choice. The reality is, if you're going out to 4 or 5 agencies, they're putting in the time and effort. It's not paid for. It's not billable. That cost has to be absorbed by the paying clients at some point. And so when you get to the stage of finally negotiating a rate card and what you're going to pay, if you win that work, you have to absorb all the costs for all the pitching that you didn't win. And I just think that the system is fundamentally broken. And look, not wanting to talk about my own agency too much, but it was part of the catalyst I got to with Fractal, where I just went, I wanted to create an agency that was different. And so I openly say to potential clients now, look, I don't pitch, but I'm quite happy to get started straight away. Let's work together for a week. And if you don't like it, we can just walk away. We can sign a contract, but you can get out of free, no win, no pay kind of thing for an agency. I would rather put a week of real work in for a client and then go, this isn't going to work, because I've just been through that process, and pitching's just so expensive. And I think it's just this illusion of cost saving for a client. And look, if I was the worst example of this is when you're pitching to retain a client. Like the concept, and I've done this, right? You have a client, they're on a retainer, you've had them for 2 years, they put you back out to pitch, and then they retain you. You've had to defend your job. And so you've got 2-3 large agencies that have all put in $10,000, $15,000 worth of pitching time. You've put in pitching time, and then you've ended up as the incumbent winning the business back. And then you see advertising age, the incumbent agency held onto the account, and you just look and you go, there's $50,000, $60,000 of lost labor sitting in there. Like, just how ridiculous is this system? So look, not a big fan of it. I think there's got to be better ways of doing it. And I think some kind of try before you buy system's got to be more efficient.
Yeah. You have, to my understanding, you have some stories too from your time in the UK about pitching that where it didn't quite go the way you wanted it to at times.
Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. Some stories is an understatement. I could be here for 3 hours if we've got enough time. But look, you get successes, you can get losses. So one of the successes we had was pitching for Coca-Cola, and we were pitching for the European-wide digital business for Coca-Cola, which is, I would imagine, much bigger now, but I'm old enough to have been through this when it was mostly around search. And look, let's be honest about it. Search for Coca-Cola is not going to be massive, but we.
So you're working for a UK agency?
Yeah, sorry to set the context. Yeah, so I was working for. So there we were pitching as Reprise Media. Reprise Media was a fairly new search agency spin out from IPG, so Interpublic Group, so one of the big holding groups, and they were really breaking out of a search only agency, and I was brought in to set up the UK office, and we sort of started that expansion. And the Coca-Cola company came up, and we got to pitch in for that. Now, I was running the UK office. Good friend of mine and colleague at the time, Stefan Horst, was running single-handedly the European office, I air quote, for the podcast. And look, he led that. We did a lot of the work out of the UK to win that pitch. And it went really well. Like, we went through that whole process. But the thing for us was we were sitting there and working, and we didn't start the pitch work until about 6 o'clock midweek. So we'd do all of our regular work. We'd kind of get something to eat, and then we'd start working. We'd go down to the boardroom. We'd do PowerPoint slides. We'd work through strategy. I think a couple of times we were working till 2-3 o'clock in the morning. Had some just ridiculous moments. I remember one in particular with Stefan. We were trying to organize the slides. We had about 100 and something slides, and they were all printed out in A4 paper, and we were moving them around this long deck. Anyway, long table, and I was getting something wrong. And Stefan, who is bilingual, and so English and German, was interchanging his German and English because he was so tired. And I was so tired, I didn't realize he was doing it. And it just got to this ridiculous moment where we were both like yelling at each other. And then we realized that he was speaking in German, and we were just on the floor crying, looking at each other going, this is ridiculous. Look at the watch. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. It's like, why are we here doing it? It was great. Probably one of the best things we did around that was we actually decided to print the pitch book rather than put up in PowerPoint slides. And we actually put a cover on it that was, the office was based in Farringdon, and Farringdon's the heart of printing in the UK. And so they've got 24/7 printers. And so we actually got them to laser cut aluminium covers that looked like, with a swoosh like the Coca-Cola logo on it. So it looked like it was Coke cans rolled out. It was just an amazing pitch. And the final slide with all the, because you had to present like the costings and things in there, we ended up presenting them in a very simple way. But the only way to see it, so we framed the whole thing around, we came up with a fake concept called 3D search. This is Mad Men-esque level pitching. It was a boring topic, but we call it 3D pitch. Remember the old cellophane glasses?
Yeah.
So we actually had them designed and cut out, and they had to put the glasses on to read the numbers. And you can imagine these Coca-Cola executives wouldn't want to do this, but you've got to see the numbers. So we did that, and ultimately we won, which was more to Stefan and a great team.
And is that the idea of the cellophane glasses? Like that's to get more engagement in the pitch?
You just need to stand out.
Yeah.
You need to do something that they remember. The concept of 3D search was we basically created 3 pillars of search strategy we're going to base it around. So we themed everything we were doing. It gave a really fun moment at the end. I actually think one of the key things we did there was we brought someone from global, Stefan from Europe, I ran the UK office, and then we brought someone to the final pitch was in Berlin, and we got a super young grad who just started to come in, and she delivered the closing slides and presentation. And the feedback from Coca-Cola at the time was that was the clincher. The clincher for them was the fact that like a 22-year-old lady came in and she did the closing pitch. It wasn't the VP of Global Strategy and Innovation and Research or whatever glorious title he had. And it wasn't the 30-something-year-old UK guy. It was the local German lady who'd come in, and our promise was that she would be on the account. She would be 100% Coca-Cola billable. And I genuinely think that made a difference. In fact, when I say I think, they literally told us that made a difference. So yeah, there was a lot of theatre, a lot of acting, a lot of pizzazz. I think we were definitely not winning coming into that last pitch, but I think the way we put it together was absolutely perfect. The cost of that, look, honestly, I think we must have been 50,000 sterling in. So what's 100,000 Australian dollars?
Wow. Yep.
It's expensive stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it makes me think of, when I'll put a deck together or a presentation together, I say that word to myself, theatre. That's what I'm thinking about, unfortunately. And I don't enjoy that, but it's the reality is, you need it to keep people engaged, and doesn't necessarily directly correlate to how good you'd be at the job or to doing the work. But yes, I think about the theatre concept a lot too.
Fortunately, I'm pretty good at it. Mm-hmm. I'm good at the theatre. Mm-hmm. I often will say to people, I think I know enough that I could convince most people of most things in digital. And I've even found myself in situations where I'm looking at people and going, you're not believing what I'm saying. And so as a real bit of a, I don't know, like an FU kind of a moment, I'll actually pitch something to them so convincingly that I know is wrong, watch them buy into the idea, and then pull that rug out from underneath them and say, but that's completely wrong, and this is why. And I'll say to them, this is what you need to be careful about. The shiny, glossy presentation that if I've got great theatre, a great presence, a great story, the substance sometimes has to be there. It's easy to buy into that. And I just think it's so hard for an internal marketer or a business owner who's looking at an agency to distinguish between great theatre. And I don't mean sales work, because it's when we think sales, we're thinking like deals and processes and, the handshake. Theatre's the performance, the journey, the storytelling. And if it's kind of, I've said Mad Men before, but if that's good, if you've got someone in that journey, they'll buy. And the scary thing is, if you're not genuine and you're just sales focused, you're going to end up selling promises that your agency is probably not going to be able to deliver at the end of it. Mm-hmm. And that's where that who's in that pitch team is critical. So if you've got some global strategy guy that needs to tick, it's typically a guy that needs to sort of tick a box and get some runs on the board, they're going to promise anything. Mm-hmm. And it may not be right for the client, but it may look good. Mm-hmm. And I think you take that and you also merge, because that a good theatrical pitch typically becomes the one that also wins an award. So people who are going for those agency awards and things like that. Look, we've all done it. If we've done agency work, I don't know. I've personally never found any great joy in winning those pitches because they're not steeped in fundamentals. We've all done those applications. Well, so we've all done it, but lots of people have done the applications. The client very rarely shares numbers behind it. It's all a bit of a furphy. It just has to look good on the front, and you can win an award.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when you're talking about before that you will pull the rug out from under people and, you'll talk them into something for 5 to 10 minutes ago, actually, that's all wrong. So you're trying to demonstrate there, like you're trying to get them to experience how easy you can be hoodwinked with some of this stuff.
Yeah. Look, it's brutal, but that's exactly it. Yeah. So if I'm presenting to a bunch of founders in an accelerator program, I will do this a lot. I'll try to teach them how important it is to understand who's presenting to them. Like, what's their agenda? What's their experience? Who are you to them? What's their ability to teach? And it's, the Dunning-Kruger effect. You're probably familiar with it. And The most convincing people on the Dunning-Kruger curve. So maybe I'll just explain it.
Yep.
So Dunning-Kruger did some research and then marketers got hold of it and made it look better than they did in the research. So we normalized everything and made the curve super smooth. But effectively, they discovered that confidence level, like the confidence level that you present when you're presenting an idea, is highest when you have a little bit of knowledge. So it starts low because you've got no knowledge. You get a little bit of knowledge, it goes super high. And then as you learn more, it reduces because you become aware of what you don't know. The more you know you don't know, right? That makes sense. But then what happens is it starts to go down. And then at a certain point, you get enough experience, it starts to come back up again because you become an expert in the field. The really amazing thing is no matter how much of an expert you can become the absolute world leader on a topic. Your confidence level never gets as high as it did when you were in ignorance, right? That blissful ignorance, which they termed Mount Stupid. Now, the problem is, as a client, as a customer, you have to work out whether this absolutely convincing pitch is coming from the peak of Mount Stupid or whether it's an expert who actually isn't presenting with confidence. And so sometimes it's really important that clients, founders, business owners learn that filter. They learn to see through that and get cut past that storytelling. And so I think it's good to give that experience and to Jekyll and Hyde yourself a bit so that they go, oh, wow, hang on. I need to always be on. I need to understand what's happening, to understand what filter I'm going to put on this. And I don't want people to be jaded, but the reality is often the people that are pitching you are not the people who turn up to deliver the work.
Yep. They're not the subject matter expert.
Exactly. Yeah. So, look, to that point about Coca-Cola, I think it's really important that you do understand, okay, this is your pitch team. And good clients or prospective clients will always say this. So are you going to be on my account or am I never going to see you again? Yeah. And you should. They're the kind of questions you need to be asking. And look, reference all that kind of stuff the same. But the reality is that a bit of experience in a few pitches, you get good at it. You know what you need to do. You know how you need to sell it. Look, it is fun. Like I won't get away from it. The excitement. I still vividly remember sitting on one side of that Farringdon office, looking across the office floor. I know Stefan got the phone call. He's like mouthing to me that it's Coca-Cola. And then he's like, oh, down and it's up and down and up. And then he just like massive thumbs up. And I'm like off my chair excited. And he's trying to write down the details of what the deal actually is. But that was an amazing moment. I mean, I watched the, what was that Nike movie that came out where they signed Jordan Air? I think it's called Air.
Oh, yep.
When they closed that deal and it came through, I was messaging Stefan and sort of saying, I just watched this and all I could think of was I remember you on the other side with getting that call. So look, the dopamine hit of winning stuff, it is massive. Like, and I'm like, what are we now? Like 20 years later? No, not quite. 15, 16
You're still
years
feeling
later.
it now? Yeah.
I can still feel it. I'm still excited and pumped by it. So it's addictive.
Yeah.
It's just really expensive.
Yeah. Well, kind of similar to making a sale though, right?
Yeah.
Like you just, it is quite the feeling that never really gets old.
Yeah. It's competitive, right?
Yeah.
Like it's, and as marketers, I don't think we often think of ourselves as being competitive, but we are. We're competing for eyeballs. We're competing for attention. We're competing for market share, search impressions, view times. Like this is what we're doing. We're competing for attention. And so, a pitch is just a much more glorified version of that. So, it is fun. You can get addicted to it, but the crash on the other side when it doesn't work, again, anyone who's been through a series of pitching knows there's only one winner. And it doesn't matter whether you win. Sorry, it doesn't matter if you lose, come last, or you come second. You get exactly the same amount of revenue, which is zero. Yeah. So, if I was to give advice on pitching, it's you may as well be bold or go home, right? Because doing the normal, doing what you're expected to do, and maybe as an incumbent you do that, but coming second because it was, and you'll get these feedback. Oh, really good, you came second. If you're pitching for business and you're getting second a lot, and they're telling you like, oh, you're our next choice, but we just went with this. You need to change your frame. You need to start being bolder and going for the win. Swing for the fences, It's baseball, let's call it cricket. But you need to go for it because you may as well get eliminated on the first round and not incur the extra costs and have a chance of winning. Yeah. The Coca-Cola pitch was different. I think we were just coming in as like a lazy second. I think it was that concept of bringing in a hierarchy to work on the account. I think presenting from a book, not on a screen. I think bringing in a team and allowing a very junior person to close the pitch probably got us over the line. The actual delivery of it was all fairly straightforward and basic. But look, you do that, and then at the same time, that's a story about winning. There's plenty of stories of losing as well.
Give us one about losing.
I'll try to be. So, not long after we'd had Coca-Cola, big win. First, really, it's just a massive brand, right? It can move the stock price of Interpublic Group. It's bringing Coca-Cola into the house. It was, I don't remember. I think that was the first time someone outside WPP had brought them in 6 years. We probably added, I'm just making it up, but I'm sure we added millions and millions of dollars to the bottom line of the value of Interpublic Group.
Amazing what a company that sells brown sludge can do.
And look, the reality is, I know we're moving on a little bit from Coca-Cola, but those marketers, they know their stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, look, I've never met a marketing team who more got their persona and their brand. It was just, I remember reading it and going, they're better than me. Like, normally I'm used to being the smart marketer in the room. And then those guys flew over from Atlanta and they first presented their version of stuff. I remember sitting there going, I don't have the same marketing background that you guys do.
Wow, okay.
Impressive. But we then got our first opportunity. We were doing H&M in the UK, and then we got invited to do H&M Global Search. So Reprise Media had just rolled out around the world. This was our first global pitch. Super exciting. I was really pumped. So we went with the book idea again, but this time we did it as a magazine. And the idea was I was going to introduce every office from around the world. I got every office to do the same hierarchy. Here's your GM, here's your lead, got a search strategy person, here's one of your account managers. And I gave every single person a small budget to go into H&M and add H&M to their outfit. So we had this concept that we were taking a little bit of poetic license, but the idea was we could add some H&M. So the head of the UK office was a 50-something-year-old guy. He put on H&M socks, pretty basic. But we actually did photo shoots. Like, we did everything up and we photoshopped it and made it look like a lookbook. So you were meeting the staff. And it was amazing. We went into Sweden. H&M is a great company, by the way. Like, working for those guys, I just learned so much. This is a little bit of a sidebar. But female-led company, incredibly good at looking after their staff. And some really interesting concepts on pitching as well. They couldn't take pens out of the pitch rooms because of they have these really strict rules around bribes and being led. So you couldn't book them taxis, you couldn't give them pens, you couldn't even leave the presentation on a USB. They would download on their laptop and hand you back your branded USB.
Oh, wow.
Which is like £2, right? But they couldn't take anything. Yeah. Great company. Mm-hmm. Long story short, we ultimately didn't win that pitch. I think we came second, where you don't want to come, right? But the thing was, when we won that, when we lost H&M, I then ended up with all of the costs sitting on my UK P&L. So I was running the UK office, and we have these shadow P&Ls. Shadow P&Ls is just a way to pass responsibility on someone. It's not real money. CFO takes care of it. The whole thing is just run on a single Excel page. Like, it's brutally simple. But that just sat, which meant I then had to spend the rest of the year burning through that cost and holding on to staff and holding back on hiring and working my team harder. No one from around the world stepped up. No, we basically had to take the budget. Like, it wasn't too bad, $100 in different offices for some socks and ties and shirts and a few things like that. I still have my burgundy jacket that I wore. I wore it to a 50th birthday party last weekend, actually. So nice. I still got some value out of it. But all those costs, the printing costs, that'll sit on my UK P&L. And that, to be honest, that was the moment where I felt so isolated and left and burnt that was the moment where I went, I don't want to do this anymore. 3 months later, after I'd done my notice period, I was off working for a startup company called discountvouchers.co.uk in the UK, came in as CEO, and just totally different. I just couldn't do it. Like, that H&M pitch coming second and being saddled with that cost, and Global couldn't pick it up, that just killed me. Like, just the idea of the structure and the way that cost was sunk. Whereas, painfully with Coca-Cola, Stefan didn't get to make the announcement. Someone from the US Global team raced it out to the press before he did. And so, we never saw this dude. Like, he just turned up and then he's like being quoted. It's like, what? You weren't there.
You have nothing to do with this. Yeah.
And so they were very happy to take profit and revenue off when it was there and spread it out among the offices. But the minute it didn't win, it was like, let's just dump it on your local office. Yeah.
Yep. Gotcha. Okay. Can you remember with that pitch, I'd be interested how long that was on your mind for, because there's the cost of the time and the cost of the money. but I'd like the mental load I think of with this stuff is like you would have that in the back of your mind for maybe months, like leading up to it.
Yeah, I can tell stories. I can tell stories about things. It was in my mind for months. It just reminded me of a part. My daughter had just been born, and my agency wasn't putting pressure on her, but she was young, and so if we've got time, I'll tell the story. When I presented in Sweden, so there's multiple rounds for these things. When I presented, I was wearing that jacket, the burgundy jacket. I'm in the middle of presenting, doing my section. I put my hand in my pocket because I'm fidgeting a bit nervous, and I pulled out a baby Gap sock. Now, there's multiple things about that. I'm in H&M. I pulled out Gap. Like that is only thing I could have done worse was Zara. Zara is more of a, and I pulled it out and I put it back in my pocket.
So you're saying competitor brand?
Yeah. I didn't mean to do it. I didn't know I had it in my pocket. And I think the global CEO was in the office at the same time, a US guy, Bant. But I just remember thinking, and it was like, I think he said to me, "Did you mean to do that?" Because what happened then was I pulled that up, put it back in my pocket, a bit of a panic. And then one of the, as I said, it was all female. And they're like, "Have you got a baby?" And it's like, yeah. During the pitch, I was showing baby photos of my daughter Molly inside. So I'm in Sweden, and I'm tying things, and they're looking at baby photos and going through the whole thing. And one of our local contacts said to me afterwards, we didn't win the pitch, and everyone at Reprise was like talking. It was almost like it became like a story about how Gerard pulled out a baby sock, female clients, mums in the room looking at baby in the middle of like millions of dollars worth of pitch. And Gerard's got them looking at baby photos, and they're like, and we developed a real bond. And I said, we learned a lot about how to run an agency, run a business, and H&M's female led. What they saw was a dad that should have been in the UK. But a dad that shouldn't have been in Sweden and pitching.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And
okay.
and I got that feedback sort of off the record on the side.
Yeah.
That they loved the baby, they loved Molly, loved me, loved the story, everything about it. Did not love the fact that I had flown away. And so my wife with a new baby, newish, I don't know, she had 3 months old, was there. And I'm like, that was a negative. Now, I'm saying this on a podcast and putting it on public record, but internally, it was like a God pitch move, like to present baby photos in the middle of it and work that in, like just next level pitching. And then in reality, it was the client and the ethos of the company was paid paternity leave, paid maternity leave, support it. Sweden has infinitely better laws around this than even Australia, which is quite high. And so we weren't the right kind of agency. Now, I think any agency would have been in the same situation. That was pretty standard. But I learned a lot about it. And in reflection now, talking to you, I think that's probably one of the driving forces. Like, that's why, I needed to change this. I was doing things like riding a scooter into work so that I reduced my commute time so I could get back in time to do bath time. So I'm riding a scooter through like a little Vespa. I'm a big guy. Like, I looked ridiculous on this thing. But I was doing that to reduce my travel time so I could see my daughter, because the idea of coming home and missing bath time was too much. So I was weirdly making the choice to not take my life in my hand, but scooters are a little bit dangerous. I was doing that to be in there, and you just sort of look at that. And so for them, me traveling across the world to pitch, the agency model from their side was broken. And I think that really hit them the wrong way. I know they literally told me it hit them the wrong way. And I think we've learned a lot about that. So, it drove my way of thinking about pitching and work-life balance, and the way that agencies squeeze you during that pitch process, because you've got to pitch above and beyond, right? You don't really get many hours in the day. Like, you've got to service clients during the day. Your pitching is the extra. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to work after hours. I own my agency. I don't want to work after 6. So I think there's a lot to be learned around the pitching process. I don't think it's right. And then maybe even from H&M's point of view, if they don't want that, then maybe the pitch process isn't the right way to go about doing it either. So, look, I'm not a fan, in summary. I'm not a fan of pitching. I think I see very little upside other than the dopamine hit you get from a win, the excitement, the anxiety. But to your point before, I was living through that. I was stressing about it. And then the weeks afterwards of those messages, have you heard anything yet? Any news on H&M? And you're like, I don't know. It's like No, nothing. It's
So it's just hanging over you then. After you put all the effort in and then wait.
Yep. And then and anyone who's worked agency knows you have it's like a crappy CRM of weighted chance. So the opportunity is $1 million worth of annualized revenue or whatever it happens, or billings or something, right? And then it's like, what's your chance of winning it? Like 70%. So they're putting 70,000 on your P&L. Now that's sitting there, and as time goes by, it literally whittles down. But then when you don't win, that 70,000 weighted average gets yanked. The CFO comes in, draws a line up, and he's like, oh, you got 3 too many staff now. Mm-hmm. And you're literally confronted with this idea of like staff coming in and out. So, am I thinking about the pitch and things? Yeah, but I'm also thinking about that ruled line. Like I don't think anyone should kid themselves about how these holding companies run these. Staff are prioritized, they're held against clients, and when you don't have the revenue to justify the staff, they make redundancies. And redundancies, you get a ranked order in a formula, and the people at the bottom are the first ones are going to go. And it's like you keep adding it up until the salaries equal the loss that you're making. And then they're the redundancies and those people go. So if you're running a shadow P&L, like you don't want to be in the room. So if you're sitting in an agency office now and you've seen your GM or your MD walking into the room with the CFO, and the CFO's got a ruler and they're sliding it up, right? That's the time to get back onto seat, right? Because they're going to make cuts.
Right. Yeah. A CFO with a ruler is bad news in an agency. Got it. Got it. Well, awesome. Thanks for sharing that on the episode. Maybe if you wanted to summarize just what are your takeaways from your stories? What's your position on pitching? And maybe leave us with where people can find you if they want to come and chat to you.
Look, I think from a client side, try not to push too much cost onto the agencies to pitch, right? Whether you're directly bearing it or indirectly bearing it, someone is at some point. I think if you're on the agency side and you're pitching, try to be bold. You don't get any money for second place. You may as well have some fun and go for the win. I think the other thing,
disqualified early is better than actually coming second.
100%. Like pitch real and be true about it. I think the other thing is, if you're client side, make sure the team that's pitching you are locked into that contract and are going to be on your account. And if the people that are in that room are not willing to lock themselves into the account, just walk away right there and then. If you've got some glorious global head of innovation dude that turns up and he's amazing in the room, you love, if he's not going to be on your account, if he's not part of that billing set, walk away from that agency, because their structure is fundamentally flawed and you will not be getting it. So you want to make sure whoever's pitching, in fact, stipulate that at the front. If you're bringing people into the room, I don't want to be talking to anyone who's not going to be on the account. And if they break that, put some clauses behind it. Because I just think the idea of having a pitch team and a delivery team is two different. It grates me so much.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you say that too, I think about agency, and you are kind of buying people.
Yeah.
When you are hiring an agency, that's the asset you're buying. It's not a chair or it's not a hard asset. It's the people you're buying.
Yeah, and to think of it like clothing, it's like that clothing may look good on an H&M model, but what does it look like on me, right? So you've got to try it on, right? And unfortunately, the H&M models look better than I look. So when I put on that jacket, I need to look at what it looks like for me, right? So yes, we buy a lot of stuff online, but ultimately we've got to wear it. And so if the team that's pitching you isn't the team that's going to deliver for you, I just think walk away from it and find someone else. But as much as possible, pitch for the win. If you're a client side, get the right team in and try to reduce the burden. Like, just don't offload all that work. I think you're just adding to the cost base. I think if everyone keeps doing it and going through that process, I think collectively clients are doing themselves a disservice, and they're all ultimately paying higher and higher fees as a result of all offloading on each other. Yeah, well, as you said before, the agency's got to make that up with another client, right? So cover the loss. So yeah, really interesting. Where can people find you if they want to come and chat or work with Fractal? If you want to find me, I'm on LinkedIn. I think you can Google me. If you can find the Fractal website. Look, if you can't find a way to contact me, I'm probably not the right agency to be working with, right? So there's the challenge. Find me and contact me. If you can't find me, then you've done something wrong. You don't make people pitch, but you do make them Google and find you. Yeah. It's how to work with you. Awesome, Gerard. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Cheers. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Push Podcast.
Please remember to subscribe, and if you are enjoying the episodes, please leave a review of the podcast on your platform of choice. It really helps to build the podcast credibility and to help others find this type of information.